Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be talking about the Fantasy Football Week 11 running back rankings. I'm going to start off the video by going over the matchups for Week 11 for the running back position to see who really has the best matchups and worst matchups when it comes to this week in order to, kind of give you guys an argument or two onto why or not you should start specific players. And after that, I'm going to be going over my 1 through 36 rankings of the running back position, as I'll give you a breakdown on all 36 players to the best of my ability to kind of give you my idea how Week 11 is going to turn out for the position. Now, before we begin, I just want to thank many of you who have gone down to the comment section and asked questions. I will get back to you within the next couple days for sure. And if you guys haven't, you can also ask me on Twitter. But again, thank you very much for the support for those of you who have subscribed. And for those of you who haven't, please subscribe for more content. I'm bringing out videos pretty much every day of the week, and sometimes on Saturdays, but usually Monday through Friday is the consistent stream. So without further ado, let's get into a little bit of the fantasy points against, a segment that we've had on this show a couple times, and we continuously have turned back to this just to kind of give you guys an idea on how the specific matchups are going to break down and how I see it specifically turning out for this coming week. So as you can see on the screen, the number one, so this is how it works. Number one, for those of you who are new, number one on the list is the Kansas City Chiefs. They give up the most points to the running back position on a weekly basis in half-point PPR scoring. Everything that I go over today is going to be in half-point PPR scoring as usual. But for those of you who are new, I just wanted to preface that so that you guys have an idea of where exactly my rankings or my thought process kind of comes from. Half-point PPR, the reasoning behind it is because I wanted to kind of meet the full-point PPR and the standard guys in the middle. Half-point PPR was the best way to do that. So my rankings will be in half-point PPR, just a preface for that. Now, let's talk about fantasy points against. Now, as I mentioned, the Kansas City Chiefs give up the most points to the running back position on a weekly basis thus far this season. This past week, they let David Johnson absolutely take over. He had 30-plus points. He had his best season thus far this season, and everything pretty much aligned perfectly for him to break out, have a great week, which by all means we expected because of the Kansas City defense. They really just can't stop the run. This coming week, Kansas City, they play against Todd Gurley in the Rams in Los Angeles. Just recently, earlier today, the news came out that they will not be playing in Mexico City on Monday night because the field conditions were too poor, honestly. According to the source that I saw, they said that the field had been pretty much torn apart by a concert and a soccer game that had taken place the 2 weeks prior to Monday. So it was pretty torn up. They sent NFL officials and their grass people down there, and they figured that there's no way that we are going to be able to construct or salvage what we have on the field. So we're just going to give the Rams a home game. Well, that's very generous of them. Thank you very much, Rams fans. Such as I will be pretty happy with that result. So that is that. The Kansas City Chiefs, they give up the number one or the most running points to the running back position. Todd Gurley is going to feast. It's a given. He is going to feast. He's going to have a fantastic week. After that, the Cincinnati Bengals. Who plays against the Cincinnati Bengals this week? Well, this past week, Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram, they ripped them apart. This week, the Baltimore Ravens will be playing against the Cincinnati Bengals. Whether that is with or without Joe Flacco is uncertain as of right now. The reports are coming out that Jim Harbaugh has come out and said Joe Flacco doesn't need a practice to play. He'll be ready, right? Okay, thanks. Where does that leave us, right? There have been reports that I even heard that Jim Harbaugh may be out of Baltimore by the end of the season. So I'm not sure exactly what's happening. I don't know if they're going to start Lamar Jackson. Maybe they'll start Robert Griffin. I'm not sure what the situation is. But either way, I still like the idea of playing Alex Collins this week against the defense that really isn't great. Rest of season, guys, Alex Collins, if you go check out his rest of season strength of schedule, He's got a pretty easy strength of the schedule going forward. I understand he's sharing the backfield with guys like Ty Montgomery and Javoris Allen, but as of right now, Bengals not bad matchup for them. Number 3, we have Atlanta Falcons. Ezekiel Elliott and the Dallas Cowboys will be going against the Atlanta Falcons this week. And off of that last performance, right? If you guys remember last week, the Philadelphia Eagles were giving up the least fantasy points to the running back position on a weekly basis. If you look down below, they are no longer, because Ezekiel Elliott put up 34 fantasy points on their chest. Had an absolute monster week going against the Falcons, who just gave up. Nick Chubb had 200 all-purpose yards rushing and receiving. Duke Johnson had a touchdown. Nick Chubb had 2 touchdowns himself. Zeke is he's gonna feast. He's gonna feast, guys. And watch out. I mean, the Falcons are good. It's gonna be a little bit of a shootout, but the Falcons, they're gonna get torched defensively by Zeke. Arizona Cardinals, they give up a lot of points on the running game. Kareem Hunt wasn't able to take advantage of that this past week, but look, here's the risky thing, right? There is a possibility, yes, the Cardinals, they play the Raiders. There's a possibility that Doug Martin and or Jalen Richard could have a good week, but can we trust it? That's the question. Can we trust the fact that they're trying to purposely lose games? We've seen them only score 9 points in the last 2 weeks. Are they going to be able to turn it around against the Cardinals, even though the Cardinals give up a lot of points on the ground? They're giving up nearly 120 rushing yards per game. And to be honest, Doug Martin would be the main benefactor if, they're trying to actually win games. The question is, will he be able to, or are they going to give him the opportunity to? My rankings will kind of give you an idea on that. Miami Dolphins are on a bye week. Oakland Raiders, as I mentioned before, just a couple seconds ago, they're just trying to tank games. So where does that leave David Johnson? For those of you who own David Johnson this week, he's going to have a great week. Why? Because the Oakland Raiders, they're not trying to play to win games. And to be honest, giving up 128 rushing yards per game. They're giving up the most rushing yards per game in the National Football League on average this season. And to be honest, David Johnson's going to be a beast. The Cleveland Browns are on bye week. The Lions play against the Carolina Panthers. We know Christian McCaffrey, what he's capable of. He'll be able to be consistent and put up a pretty good, substantial amount of points this coming week. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they haven't been great against the running back position either, whether that's in the passing game or on the ground. Saquon Barkley will be able to exploit that. And the last team that is in the green, per se, when it comes to the running back position is the New York Giants. They play against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Does that mean we should be starting guys like Payton Barber? I don't know. But you know what's crazy? Jacquizz Rodgers, right? Which is kind of a guy that no one really talks about. I think, 2 years back, Jacquizz Rodgers was used a little bit more to an extent within this offense when Doug Martin had gone down with a couple injuries. But as of late, Jacquizz Rodgers this past week had, if I'm not mistaken, this dude had 100 receiving yards. Let me look this up. Couple seconds. Boom. I'll pull it up. Here it is. Let's see. Jacquizz Rodgers this past... Goodness gracious. You're only showing me his rushing stats? Why are you doing this to me, huh? Thank you. Game log. Okay. Jacquizz Rodgers this past week against the Washington Redskins had 8 catches for 102 yards on 8 targets. Oh, my God. That is a lot. That is a lot of yards. Obviously, I can't trust Jacquizz Rodgers, but there's a potential that maybe if you're playing in the super deep league, they're going to have to throw the ball. Otherwise, Payton Barber could be a good option. Other than that, the mid-tier defenses, the Bills are on a bye week. The Colts play against Tennessee Titans, which, the Tennessee Titans have a 2-headed monster back there that have been feasting as of late. Denver Broncos have struggled against the run thus far this season, playing against Melvin Gordon, which is going to be an easy game for them. Very familiar with that, matchup. The New York Jets are on a bye. The 49ers are on a bye. The Patriots are on a bye. The Rams, this past week, the Rams got torched. We know the Rams defense isn't great. We know that. We've seen it all season long. Especially, the Seahawks have their number. The Seahawks obviously can't, close out games. They're close. They'll get there eventually. Maybe perhaps next season when they bring in a little bit more talent to surround Russell Wilson. But they're a pretty good team. And the Rams defense, they've been exploited on the ground often this season, especially these past 2 weeks with Penny, Davis, Mark Ingram, and Alvin Kamara, pretty much ripping them apart. Other than that, the Packers playing against the Seattle Seahawks, who is a run-first team. The Seahawks, which I'll go over a little bit later, whether it's going to be Carson, Penny, or Davis. We'll kind of have an idea on that. The Chargers themselves give up a couple yards on the ground themselves. The Redskins, the Seahawks, the Texans. Now, let's talk about the teams that really don't want to give up too many points on the ground. But to be honest, it's pretty insane, right? This past week, I was kind of going over the narrative of, the Eagles have the best run defense in the league. Well, that did not take place on Sunday Night Football. In fact, Ezekiel Elliott and that offensive line, they looked better than ever. Okay, they had it was finally like the Hoover Dam pretty much was cracking, and finally Zeke came and trucked it, and it blew open, right? The floodgates of fantasy points, they blew open. But honestly, the Eagles' defense, they're not bad. But let's talk about defenses that are in the red per se, just about right there. Yeah. So the Cowboys, they give up a fair share, but honestly, the Cowboys' defense has been low-key good this season comparatively to years past. So, Van Esch, that linebacker, the rookie, he is a monster. He is going to be a pretty good replacement for Sean Lee, even though Sean Lee's been pretty good for the organization. The Vikings. Okay, so who do the Dallas Cowboys play? They play against the Falcons. Honestly, I'm not really worried about that, considering the Cowboys do like to give up a lot of points in the passing game. Tevin Coleman is going to be able to succeed in that department. Tevin Coleman, from what you see in the rankings a little bit later, I'm not really worried about it. I think they'll be able to take care of themselves. The Minnesota Vikings, they play against the Chicago Bears running backs. We saw what Jordan Howard was able to do last week. I'll go into that a little bit more in the future, but again, that's a tough matchup. The Carolina Panthers playing tough against the running back position, playing against the Lions this week. But honestly, Kerryon Johnson proved, hey, you know what? I can do it whenever I want to. I'll score 2 touchdowns and make Andrew's week a living nightmare. Eagles, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Saints. The Saints, oh my goodness, guys. The Saints do not give up any yards to the running back. They will not. They refuse to get burnt on the ground, right? They'll let you just pass all over them. But they know for a fact there is a better chance of them winning games when you throw the ball, because the likelihood of you making a mistake and turning over the ball is pretty high comparatively to running them over. So they've assembled a front seven that is absolutely stout. They fill gaps and they play their assignments. They keep contained. And to be honest, they've been fantastic all season long. Who do the Saints play this coming week? They play against the Eagles. Eagles' run game hasn't looked good. I'll get into the running backs of the Eagles in a little bit. But who's the best defense against the running back position? That's the Tennessee Titans and the Baltimore Ravens as of late. Both of them playing against decent teams. Marlon Mack playing against the Tennessee Titans. Joe Mixon against the Ravens. How much of a difference is that going to make? To be honest, I'd say it would make a difference. But if we saw what happened last week, to be honest, maybe those two guys are going to have fantastic weeks. There's a possibility. We're using reverse psychology at this point. I'm not sure. But either way, these stats are here for you guys. I just kind of wanted to break them down, give you my thoughts on the specific situation scenarios that are going down. Now, without further ado, let's go into my rankings so I can break down all of the players for Week 11 at the running back position, my top 36. If there are any other guys that I did not mention within these rankings, please go ahead, go down to the comment section, let me know, so I can go ahead and address that, let you guys know my opinions on that, so on and so forth. So here we are. We are here. And really quickly, you see this above me? Right there. Yeah. It says rankings are subject to change. It's pretty insane because the R, okay, R is not even, I'm looking at a keyboard right now. R is not even like remotely close to N or A, right? You'd have to make a giant mistake. And that is what happened. A giant mistake is taking place. Speaking of the Giants, no, it's okay. Oh, you know what? Speaking of the Giants, you know what? Perfect transition. Let's talk about last night's Monday Night Football game. My thoughts. I didn't get over that go over that because yesterday I was recording the video while the game went on. So you know what? Perfect transition. Thank you, Charge, for the Giant mistake so that we can transition to the Giants versus 49er game on Monday Night Football. Fantastic. Okay, let's talk about the outcome, right? Eli Manning only threw 188 total passing yards, but guess what? He threw for 3 touchdowns. Fantastic. You know, as I mentioned yesterday in the waiver wire video, they play against Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. And, you know, Eli, obviously, he looked decent. We know he's bad. But fantasy-wise, when you throw in 3 touchdowns in a 6-point per passing touchdown league, that's pretty decent. That's pretty decent, I'll be honest. Odell Beckham himself with 2 of those touchdowns receiving on 4 receptions. Had those 2 touchdowns, had a great week, had a 20-point fantasy week, looked fantastic. Other than him within the receiving game, Evan Ingram was able to step up. I mentioned midway, I was like, with 12 minutes remaining in the fourth quarter, Evan Ingram has 1 reception for 0 yards. Turned it around with 3 more receptions for 46 yards. Ended up having a decent fantasy week comparatively to other tight ends. Other than him, you know, Saquon, 4 receptions on the ground, 33 yards. Sterling Shepard pretty much wasn't anywhere to be found except for that 1 touchdown he caught and that 1 rushing attempt that he had, the end around that got him pretty much 10 points in fantasy. He had a 27-yard rush, 2 receptions, 9 receiving. Pretty much helped him get a 10-point week barely. But either way, offensively for this team, they put in full maximum effort in order to beat this team. The 49ers are not a great team. The Giants are not a great team, but they put in so much effort in order to win, and they picked up a W. I don't know how much morale-wise it's going to help, but rest of the season, I don't know if you need these wins. You kind of need a top 3 draft pick so you can try to go get the quarterback of the future, hopefully. Anyway, on the other side of the ball, Matt Breida. Oh, my God. Matt Breida, what are you doing to me? Why did you do this to me, Matt Breida? 17 carries, 101 rushing yards, and a touchdown on top of it. Dude had, 3 receptions and a touchdown. I mean, goodness, I don't know how many yards he had receiving. Obviously, it doesn't want to show me right now because the game is rigged. How many receiving yards did he? Goodness gracious, did I really just close the link? I don't know. It's not telling me. Either way, had a pretty good game, all things considered. 25-plus points. Jiminy Christmas. I'm not going to complain about it. Nick Mullins had a decent game. 2 of the interceptions were just tip passes. Unfortunate. George Kittle, monster. 9 receptions, 83 yards. A top 3 tight end. I mean, a guy that pretty much he's on the level of Travis Kelce Ertz at this point. He's pretty much taken the Gronk spot. Gronk probably won't play for a couple weeks. A report came out that he's probably not going to return to the team next season. They're probably going to cut him. That's unfortunate. But other than that, you know, Breida, George Kittle, Mullins was decent. Marcus Goodwin figured out some ways to catch a ball. But other than that, that's pretty much it for the Monday night game. Decent performances. You know, fantasy-wise, it helped a lot of people win games. Helped a lot of people lose games. But either way, as of right now, look decent. All right, let's talk about my top 36 rankings for Week 11 of the fantasy football season. We're going to start off from number 1, Todd Gurley. As I mentioned before, plays against the Kansas City Chiefs, giving up the most points to the running back position in half-point PPR scoring, nearly 31 points to the running back position. And Todd Gurley's been on a reign this season. He has just been absolutely tearing teams apart. And, you know, with the loss of Cooper Kupp, you know, when we saw Cooper Kupp exit with the MCL injury earlier this season, those were the times that Todd Gurley was dropping 30 after 30 after 30 because they had to rely on him more within the passing game and on the ground, giving him more opportunities. So this week against the Kansas City Chiefs, pretty much a Super Bowl matchup per se. Not saying these teams are making the Super Bowl, but I'm saying these teams have very good opportunities thus far. I mean, they're 2 high-scoring offenses that really just nobody can keep up with them. If I'm not mistaken, the stat that I heard was the over-under in this game is 64 points, which is a record and is the highest over-under that has ever been recorded ever in betting. That like for football games, that is the highest ever. Pretty insane, right? So they're going to score a lot of points. Todd Gurley is my number 1 running back for this week. No surprise. He'll be amazing. Start him up. And for those of you, really quickly, for those of you that come to me and say, Andrew, should I trade Todd Gurley for X, Y, or Z? Understand what you're getting rid of. Understand that you're getting rid of the best fantasy running back in the game. Potentially, you're getting rid of the best fantasy player in the game. In a PPR, I mean, he's right behind Patrick Mahomes, right? Just understand that that's what you're getting rid of if you trade him. I understand many of you get a lot of value out of him. Maybe you can trade him for a Fournette and a McCaffrey. But just understand, you're getting rid of the best player. This guy carried people in fantasy playoffs last year. He was the MVP of the fantasy season last year. He's looking like it this season. Just understand that. Anyway, let's move on. Number 2 at the running back position, we have Ezekiel Elliott playing against the Atlanta Falcons, giving up the 3rd most points to the running back position, coming off his best week yet in Philadelphia against the Philadelphia run defense. He's going against one of the softest matchups he could possibly find. And this team, that was a pretty big win for them. Coming off that pretty terrible performance against the Tennessee Titans on Monday Night Football, I think Ezekiel Elliott for this coming week is going to have a better, he's just going to continue to hopefully be as productive. He's not going to put up 30. I'm not expecting that. I'm expecting 20 points, and that's what I want from him. That's what I expect. That's why we drafted him in the first round. So Ezekiel Elliott, you have a great matchup. Your offensive line's looking good. The passing game with Amari Cooper's looked good, right? We've opened up the offense a little bit more within that sense. So as of right now, Ezekiel Elliott, he's my number 2 running back for this coming week. Last week we put him at 12, somehow popped off. Put him at 2, hopefully. He figures it out, hopefully. Either way, let's move on to number 3. It's going to be Kareem Hunt of the Kansas City Chiefs. On the flip side, he plays against the Rams defense. We've seen the Rams defense be very vulnerable. We know for a fact that Kareem Hunt is a fantastic running back. He's been great all season long, whether it's on the ground, in the passing game. He can, he's the game changer within this offense. If Kareem Hunt is going off, expect, 30-plus points, 35-plus points at that. He is pretty much, besides Patrick Mahomes, I understand Patrick Mahomes is being looked at as the MVP of the league as of right now. But to be honest, Kareem Hunt is doing just as good of a job. He is helping this offense out in ways that are obviously being overshadowed by Patrick Mahomes' excellence. But Kareem Hunt has been just as good. He's just been playing out of his mind. He's my number 3 running back for this coming week against the Rams defense. I'm telling you, they've struggled against the run, and I think they'll be able to get Kareem Hunt some opportunities and some good fantasy points for this coming week. Number 4, we have Melvin Gordon playing against the Denver Broncos defense. So as of right now, the Denver Broncos, we've seen them get torched, right? There's a possibility they can come out and they can get absolutely smacked. But to be honest, I don't think they're going to be that terrible. Obviously, they know what to expect. They're coming off of a bye week, playing against the not San Diego Chargers, Los Angeles Chargers, the Superchargers. And who really just didn't have a great game against the Raiders this past week. So there could be a couple, chinks in the armor that hopefully they're not able to expose. But I still think Melvin Gordon, been an animal all year long. He's just been fantastic. So as of right now, Gordon, he's a play. He's my number 4 this week. He should be all good, ready to go. And to be honest, he got a 50-plus yard touchdown. I think it was a 66-yard screen pass to the house. He literally just, you got to give him the ball in open space, a couple blockers out front, man, he is gone. He is a one-play monster. And to be honest, he's so consistent. He's my number 4 this week. Number 5, we have Saquon Barkley, as I mentioned before, plays against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense, giving up the 9th most points to the running back position. And on top of it, Saquon Barkley, even when he doesn't get it done between the tackles, in the passing game, this guy is an absolute monster. With all the checkdowns that Eli Manning has, favorited Saquon Barkley with, he continues to, as soon as he drops back, feels pressure, boom, Saquon catches the ball. So no matter what, Saquon is going to be relevant in this offense, whether the offensive line is performing or whether Eli is performing, he's going to get the ball, whether it's on the ground or in the check down game. Saquon's my number 5 against this really advantageous matchup. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, their team is falling apart. The coaching staff is just a mess. I don't know why Jameis is not playing yet, but to be honest, they believe in Fitz magic. I respect that. But as of right now, Saquon's going to be able to tear him up this weekend. I think it's in New York, so should be a good game. Number 6, we have Alvin Kamara. Now, Alvin Kamara, he's been just as good, if not better, than Barkley, Gordon, Hunt, Elliott. He like fantasy-wise, when he's scoring points, I think he's the second running back behind Todd Gurley. Yes. So Todd Gurley, thus far this season, half-point PPRs, put up 265 fantasy points. Below him is 217 points, Alvin Kamara, right? So why do I have Alvin Kamara a little bit lower? Well, to be honest, if you look down below, we're going to see a name at number 18. That's Mark Ingram. I think Mark Ingram, that performance this past week, they're going to go back to being a two-headed monster. Obviously, Alvin Kamara is not going to be the, I can only touch the ball 12 times a game kind of guy that he was his rookie season. So he's going to get more opportunity. But by all means, they're going to share a little bit more because Mark Ingram looks pretty damn good, whether it's in the run game or in the passing game. That screen pass he took to the house. So as of right now, Alvin Kamara, I'm kind of downgrading him a tad bit, but what difference does it make? You own Alvin Kamara, you're starting him this week. There it is, done. Number 7, we have Christian McCaffrey, CMC. As of right now, playing against the Detroit Lions defense, but all means they're not a great defense, right? We saw Mitchell Trubisky throw for 350 yards on them and absolutely torch them. The running game of Jordan Howard and Tarik Cohen really wasn't a factor because they just threw the ball all over them. But to be honest, the number one offensive option within this team, North Turner, the offensive coordinator of the Carolina Panthers, they want to run the ball and they want to move the offense through Christian McCaffrey. We saw that on Thursday Night Football this past week against the Pittsburgh Steelers. We know for a fact that Christian McCaffrey is going to have a fantastic game. He is a hybrid back that honestly you would think, goodness gracious, how is he still alive taking all these hits, all these carries? But by all means, he is just an absolute monster. He's been fantastic all season long, especially in PPR leagues where he continues to catch the ball out of the backfield and make plays. This coming week gets the Lions. He's going to be able to feast on them. I expect a very good week. He's my number 7, so start him up. Number 8, we have David Johnson coming off that 30-point week, like I mentioned before, playing against the Raiders defense. By all means, start him up. The Raiders defense, as I mentioned earlier, let's find that stat, giving up the 6th most fantasy points to the running back position. The only thing that I'm considering maybe why David Johnson's a little bit lower, I think they're not going to. Okay, so obviously they want to feed him the ball. 8 catches this past week, that's fantastic. You give him a bunch of carries, you give him 20-plus touches a game, that is what you want. But on top of that, I think they're gonna spread the ball a little bit more. Other than David Johnson this past week, who else was a part of that offense making plays? Larry Fitzgerald only had 40 receiving yards. Christian Kirk only had 1 reception for 10 yards. There wasn't really much of an offense other than David Johnson this past week. Let me go ahead and find this. David Johnson had 98 rushing yards and 85 receiving yards. Other than him, we had Ricky Seals-Jones for 50 yards receiving. We had Larry Fitz with 50 yards receiving, and we had TJ Logan with 14, Christian Kirk with 8. We can't have that, right? Josh Rosen's got to be able to improve. He's playing against a pretty bad defense, right? Pretty advantageous matchup, all things considered, and I think he'll be able to spread the ball himself with his arm. So hopefully for owners of Larry Fitz and perhaps even Ricky Seals-Jones, he'll spread the ball out a little bit more. But either way, I still think David Johnson is a 20-point running back for this week, considering the matchup and the switch at the offensive coordinator to Byron Leftwich. He is going to be able to call the game in order to help them win, and that is through David Johnson. That's how you want it to be run, and that's how it will be ran. Okay, so he's my number 8. Number 9, we have James Conner of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, to what extent does he have a concussion? Are we worried about that? Well, let's be honest. He went through concussion protocol and was deemed that he had a concussion last Thursday. Now, if by Sunday he is not clear, as I mentioned in the waiver wire video yesterday, the next 2 guys up is Jalen Samuels and Stephen Ridley. So you would have to go pick them up. But I don't think that James Conner is going to be out. I think he will be playing. He's playing against Jacksonville, a very good matchup for them. It's not a very good matchup. It's more of a highly anticipated matchup considering they lost twice to the Jaguars this past season, especially once in the playoffs, and the other one was a game where Ben Roethlisberger threw 3+ interceptions at home. Some nasty stuff, but James Conner this week, I think he'll be ready. He's my number 9 for this coming week. Just a little, curious how much they use him, because this past week against the Panthers, even in the first half, they weren't completely using him to his maximum potential. They were bringing in Stephen Ridley. They were bringing in Jalen Samuels on first and second down work, and I was like, are they trying to preserve him, or do they know something we don't? I guess it was the concussion, but that was even later in the game. So as of right now, he's my number 9. We'll see how that goes. Number 10, we have Leonard Fournette, who returned this past week, had a fantastic week. But here's the thing. His week was pretty much determined on his 2 scores, which by all means, he's going to be able to score on a weekly basis. And that is pretty much his role within this offense. But his rushing yards per carry average were not good. He had 24 rushes for 53 yards, averaging 2.2 yards per carry. That is awful by all means. That is not something you want to see out of Leonard Fournette. I think, if you're struggling against the Colts, I understand it's your first game back. Against the Pittsburgh Steelers, it's going to be a little bit tougher. They're a pretty stout defense. And considering you don't have the speed on the outside like Christian McCaffrey does, I think it may be difficult for him. But still, I 100% trust Leonard Fournette. He was drafted as a first, second round running back for this reason. He is going to be, the entire offense is ran through him. I understand, he makes Blake Bortles better, to be honest. When they don't have to 100% depend on Bortles to make every play. Leonard Fournette, as of right now, Bortles earlier with Yeldon was good. Then he digressed back to being Bortles without Fournette. But as of right now, hopefully both of them can, have a little bit of uptake and production and be good. But otherwise, he's my number 10. Number 11, we have Aaron Jones. Funny story. Aaron Jones, speaking of Aaron Rodgers earlier today came out and said, I want to see Aaron Jones touch the ball more per game. I want to see him have more carries. Fantastic. For Aaron Jones owners, we'll take it. Let us have it. Come on, give us the ball. They're playing against the Seahawks this coming week, and I honestly think if Aaron Jones can continue to pull in carries, continue to be given opportunity, whether it's in the passing game or on the ground, he's going to find himself some success. This is a good offensive line. This is a good team. When you're thinking of the Packers, you're thinking they're a pass-first team. In fact, if they can go ahead and feed Aaron Jones the ball here and there, he can be productive. He was able to torch one of the worst run defenses in the league, the Miami Dolphins, the other day. And this coming week against the Seahawks on Thursday Night Football, it's a short week. I think they can have a pretty, easy time running the ball. Honestly, with a little bit more opportunity, if Mike McCarthy gives it to him, he can be pretty good. We've seen him be good last season, and we saw him this past week. He's my number 11. Joe Mixon is my number 12, playing against the Ravens. Very tough matchup. It is the toughest matchup as of right now. Okay, as of right now, it is the toughest matchup. But the last time we saw the Ravens, I think James Conner put a $120 on them, something like that. He put up 100 for sure. But you never know. Maybe Mixon comes out and figures it out. But as of right now, I'm not really too worried about it. I think Mixon is a high-caliber running back. He came off, he played against the Saints last week, which by all means, we already know the Saints were a stud defense that were going to be able to stop him. I thought they'd use him a little bit more in the passing game. That wasn't the case. Mixon still this week. He's my number 12. Number 13, we have Tevin Coleman playing against the Cowboys. I think this past week, just the Falcons' offense was inept. They weren't able to get moving at all. By the time they got down to the goal line, Tevin Coleman got stuffed. He got shaken up, and he just wasn't able to get the ball into the end zone, which he probably should have been able to do, but he wasn't able to. This coming week, I think he'll find the opportunity, whether it's in the passing game or on the ground. It's a little bit, I wouldn't say it's an easier matchup, but I think they're probably, they'll recharge their batteries and they'll come at it at a different perspective and a different approach, and they'll find Tevin Coleman as much as they can. Probably utilize him more within the game. I don't think they used him enough, honestly. This past week, how many touches does this kid have? Because to be honest, they used to use Devontae Freeman at an accelerated rate. They only gave him 11 carries, right? He had 3 receptions, so a total of 14 touches total. We're looking for 22 touches. That's what we want as fantasy owners. But as of right now, I don't know if you'll get that, considering Smith is around, and they were down the majority of the game, so they really couldn't run the ball often. So as of right now, probably looking at a better matchup in terms of hopefully being more of a shootout here and there. Okay, we're moving on to our number 14. We have Kerryon Johnson, who came off of, by all means, one of my, how would I want to phrase this? Yeah, my most surprise performance of Week 10. It's not Aaron Jones. It's not Nick Chubb. It's not Trubisky. It really is Kerryon Johnson. I mean, it's not even Breida. It really, honestly, it's Kerryon Johnson. I honestly thought the Lions were going to get absolutely destroyed this past week. And they did. Defensively, they got torched. But offensively, they were able to, in the fourth quarter, put up some points. Kenny Galladay was able to do some stuff. The offensive line, even though, Khalil Mack was tearing it up and getting to Matthew Stafford, they still found Kerryon Johnson for 2 touchdowns. This coming week, playing against the Panthers, I think he has a very good matchup. I understand that the Panthers, they're a pretty decent front seven with Kuechly leading those guys, but I still think Kerryon Johnson, I've mentioned it in weeks past, he's a stud. He's one of, if not the best running back in this class coming out of Auburn. So as of right now, he's my number 14 for Week 11. Number 15, we have Marlon Mack playing against the Tennessee Titans. Honestly, just the fact that the 4 touchdowns of the Colts went to the tight end positions, went to 3 of them to Eric Ebron and 1 to Mo Alley Cox. To be honest, that kind of hurt Marlon Mack, especially when you're doing a jet sweep with Eric Ebron and handing him off the ball. That should have been a Marlon Mack touchdown by all means. A little bit unfortunate, but as of right now, this coming week against the Titans, I understand they're a tough rushing defense, but I still have some, confidence that Marlon Mack is going to be able to get it done. Number 16, we have Phillip Lindsay coming off the bye week, playing against the Chargers. As I mentioned before, Chargers defense giving up, what are they giving up? Let's see. Ooh, they're pretty stout on defense. It's not terrible, but to be honest, Phillip Lindsay, he's a pretty hard runner. When he gets going, he gets a little bit of weight behind his pads. By all means, this guy's a bowling ball. Let me go ahead and pull up some stats. Have they played the Chargers earlier this season? In fact, they have not played the Chargers thus far this season. But what have we seen from Phillip Lindsay as of late that kind of gives me a little bit of confidence to play him, right? Because many of you, he went off into the bye week. You may have forgotten what he was able to produce. The 3 weeks prior to this bye week, right? 14 carries, 90 yards, and a touchdown. 18 carries, 95 yards, and a touchdown. 17 carries, 60 yards. So in fantasy points and half-point PPR, it's 16.1, 18.7, and 9.4 fantasy points each of the last 3 weeks prior to this bye. With Royce Freeman pretty much taking the backseat within this offense, it's been Phillip Lindsay all the time. Phillip Lindsay is my number 16. I'm confident in him to be that number 1 back rest of the season. He's been fantastic for an undrafted free agent rookie. Man, he's just awesome. Number 17, we have Dalvin Cook. Now, Dalvin Cook, he plays against the Bears defense, which by all means we saw Kerryon Johnson do some work, but I don't think it's going to be that easy. I still think he's going to be able to, he's still trying to get into it, coming off of the bye week still. There is a Latavius Murray within that backfield, though he could steal some goal line carries. He could steal some opportunity here and there. I still think Dalvin Cook is going to be productive. We drafted him high in drafts in order to get him into these matchups so he can take off and produce for us. So for those of you thinking, I think he's a RB2 rest of season, and he's going to be productive within this offense. They've been looking for, to utilize that running back position. The Vikings are at their best when they have Latavius Murray going off, and I think Dalvin Cook's a better running back than Latavius Murray by far. He's going to be able to produce a lot of production for this team and fantasy points for your team. So he's my number 17. Number 18, the last guy on this page for us is Mark Ingram. As I mentioned before with Alvin Kamara, just his performance this past week, it's probably going to give Sean Payton, this offense, a little bit more confidence to use him. And in that vein, last season, it was a two-headed monster. Mark Ingram was coming off his best season as a pro yet. The most rushing yards, the most receiving yards, the most receptions, the most touchdowns. He had his best season of his entire career last year, right? And coming off of that, that suspension, it kind of held him back. But as of right now, they're looking to get back to that two-headed monster that a lot of teams are, that struggle against. With a good offensive line, the Saints can bruise you. Then they'll figure it out with Drew Brees in the passing game here and there with Michael Thomas. And then on defense, they're stout. They're not going to be able to give up much. This coming week, he's my number 18 running back. Number 19, we're here. The last 18 names I wanted to mention at the running back position. We have Dion Lewis of the Tennessee Titans playing against the Colts this coming week. The Colts, by all means, have been giving up a decent amount of points to the running back position. In fact, they give up, you ready for this? They give up 8 receptions per game to the running back position, and that's where Dion Lewis excels. In a PPR league, that's exactly where you want to see him, Okay, so let's see here. The Falcons are giving up the most receptions to the running back position. They're giving up nearly 8.5 receptions per game. Then it's the Kansas City Chiefs giving up 7.5 receptions. And then it's the Colts. The Colts are second with 7.9 receptions per game, nearly 8 receptions per game to the running back position. And the Dion Lewis effect, yes, Derrick Henry's back there stealing some touchdowns here and there, but to be honest, we can't guarantee touchdowns in the NFL, and especially in fantasy football. You never know. Spencer Ware may come in and steal a touchdown and make you lose the week. I know many of you have probably struggled with that fact this past week, but as of right now, Dion Lewis playing against the Colts, a team that gives up a lot of receptions to the running back position, gives up a lot of yards, and Dion Lewis, he's coming off of 2 weeks with 20-plus touches. I don't think that's going to stop just because of the performance of Derrick Henry. I still think Derrick Henry has some sort of fantasy value. There's no way that he's not going to have value. But Dion Lewis, he's for sure the number 1 back here. He's my number 19. Number 20, as I mentioned before, I said that the Cincinnati Bengals, they give up the third most? Let me go ahead. Here we are. The Cincinnati Bengals, they give up the second most points to the running back position, half-point PPR. They're playing against the Ravens offense that, by all means, we don't know if Joe Flacco's playing. And to be honest, if Joe Flacco doesn't play, that doesn't really hurt Alex Collins, by all means. Joe Flacco hasn't been great this season as of late, especially this past week. He dealt with that hip injury since the first quarter, so I'm not sure how much that personally affected his play. But Alex Collins is going to be used. I understand Ty Montgomery, Javoris Allen's within this offense, but Alex Collins is the number 1 running back. The back end of last season is when Alex Collins really got going. Hopefully this bye week has kind of gotten this offense back on track to where we want them to be, where they can run the ball down, defense's throat, use Marshall Yanda in this offensive line to be able to barrel down people, and Alex Collins to lead this team in fantasy production. That's the plan. He's my number 20 this week because of the matchup and the fact that, honestly, he should be able to, do some damage this coming week. Let me see this really quickly. Let's see Alex Collins' touches as of prior to the bye week. I'm kind of curious. Man, his God. Okay, so here's the thing. The last 4 weeks prior to the bye week, 19 touches, 11 touches, 11 touches, 9 touches. So they were going down. But to be honest, they've lost the last 3 games. So what does that mean? I'm not really surprised that his touches have gone down because they've had to come back in games. They lost to the New Orleans Saints, close one. They lost to the Carolina Panthers in a blowout. And then they lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers this past week. And in all of these games, they've had to come back and try to win. That really doesn't involve Alex Collins. So if you're of the opinion that they're going to continue to lose games and they're going to struggle against the Cincinnati Bengals this week, maybe Ty Montgomery is the option for you. But as of right now, Alex Collins, in my opinion, I'm pretty confident in him. He's my number 20. All right, let's talk about 21. As I mentioned before, I got to give you a little bit of details on the specific situation with the Seattle running backs in the backfield. This is my thought process behind it. As of right now, Pete Carroll came out yesterday and he said, Chris Carson will be ready for Thursday. That's literally what he said. Chris Carson will be ready for Thursday. Can I believe him? I'm not sure. I truly don't know. I have no reason not to believe Pete Carroll, but to be honest, it's a short week. Do we really want to use Chris Carson? Rashaad Penny just came off a great week. Mike Davis just had a great week. Are they going to completely rip it apart? Now, here's the thing. This is why I have Carson or Penny as my number 21. If Carson plays, he's my number 21. If he is out, Penny becomes my number 21. There it is. You've heard it here. You now know, so you don't have to really ask, what does this mean? If Carson plays, he's 21. If he's out, Penny is number 21. Done. All right, let's move on to number 22. Tarik Cohen. It's pretty sad. When he's taking goal line touches away from Jordan Howard, by all means, that's pretty scary. But Tarik Cohen, he continues to find fantasy relevance. Didn't have a fantastic week this last week because they really didn't have to use him. But I think going forward, he'll continue to be that check down play in which he'll catch a bunch of balls out of the backfield when they need him to, especially against the Vikings defense. I think they'll use Tarik Cohen a little bit more. He's a good RB2 rest of the season for sure, without a doubt in my mind. I like him more than Jordan Howard as of right now, because when Jordan Howard disappears within the game script, that's a little scary, to be honest. And they were winning really bad. Like, they were winning hard, and he wasn't used often. So that tells you something about this Chicago Bears offense, you know. Number 23, we have Lamar Miller of the Houston Texans playing against, who do the Texans play? You know, that's the Redskins. They play against the Washington Redskins this week. And the Redskins defense, I mean, they were pretty stout last week. But to be honest, the Texans, they're coming off of 6 wins in a row? It's going to be a pretty good game. It's going to be a pretty good game, to be honest. A game that probably a lot of people aren't really looking forward to. But to be honest, this is 2 teams that have 6 wins. And they've both looked pretty good. I think the Texans are going to win this game. And I think out of all, let's think about the running back position. You look at Lamar Miller at 23. Comparatively to the guys below him, I think he has a better opportunity at a touchdown than the guys below him. That is why I have him at 23. We know he's going to get the attempts. He's going to get about 15 touches this game, whether it's on the ground or in the passing game. He's going to get about 15 touches. Only when Lamar Miller starts to struggle does he get Alfred Blue to start getting pumped up and getting more touches. There's always a potential that Lamar Miller ends up getting 5 points this week. There's also a potential he gets 15. I'm thinking 15 is more of the likelihood as of right now, coming off the bye. But either way, you never know. Number 24, we have Adrian Peterson. Speaking of the Washington Redskins, really wasn't used much in this past week. But to be honest, as the week progressed, I began to fade him because, to be honest, the offensive line struggles, the offensive struggles with Alex Smith not being able to score as often as they'd like to. It's very difficult for this team to score points. They want to run the ball. Hopefully they'll get back to that this week. But they're playing against the stout front 7 defense of the Texans, one of the top 10 defenses against the running back this season. So to be honest, it's going to be a tough matchup, but I still see Adrian Peterson as a fringe flex RB2 spot. Number 25. Now, this is the next step, right, of the Seattle Seahawks running back situation. All right, so if Carson plays, Davis is my number 25. But if Penny plays and Carson is out and Penny's the starter, Davis or Davis or Penny? Oh, okay. So here no. Let me backtrack, okay? If Carson, okay, so here we go. If the Seattle running backs, shakes out to where we think it's going to be, and Chris Carson plays, because that's what Pete Carroll said was going to happen. If Chris Carson plays, Davis and Penny, in my opinion, they're equals. But to be honest, who can we trust to get more touches? We don't know. It's a coin toss at that point. You could flip one and you could start one or the other. But one of them is going to be good. They want to run the ball. Now, if Penny is to start, Davis is my number 25. That is a given. That is all this meant. Done. Finished. Number 26, Jordan Howard. I can't ignore the fact that he's going to get attempts. But is he going to be great? I'm not sure. I'm a little worried about his specific scenario. He came off of a week in which he's look, what the problem is with Jordan Howard? He doesn't get that many yards. He looks slow. And within an offense where you've got a bunch of young guys running around with their heads cut off, it's not helping. I mean, he's young too. It just doesn't make sense. Number 27, Doug Martin. As I mentioned before, he plays against the Cardinals defense. They give up a lot of points to the running back position. Of the running backs between him and Jalen Richard, I have them at 27 and number 28. Jalen Richard, he's going to get receptions. But is he going to be, 10 points in fantasy? Hopefully. He's been about 8 to 10 in the last couple weeks since Marshawn Lynch going out for the season. So I'm not sure if he's going to be able to catch a touchdown or do anything like that. But both of them, they're 27 and they're 28. I don't really expect a lot out of them, but they're flex positions, RB3s as of this week. Theo Riddick, as I mentioned before, he is the poor man's Duke Johnson. I mentioned him yesterday and in the Gauntlet video from last Friday. Where do I see Theo Riddick this week? he could be pretty decent. I think they're going to continue to use him within this offense. Expect 5 catches for 48 yards this coming week. That's where I see him at. Anything that's basically his baseline. Anything more than that it's just gravy. So that's where he's about at. So if you play in a PPR, he's a flex 10-point kind of guy. That's pretty much where we have them. But in half-point PPR, which this rankings is for, that leaves them at about 8.5 points. Just kind of the range where I expect Jalen Richard to end up. Number 30, we have Josh Adams. Now, Josh Adams, he wasn't that bad this past week against the Cowboys. 7 rushing attempts for 47 yards. By all means, it's almost 7 yards per carry, right? I think it's about 6.8 yards per carry. He looked good, right? In a couple of his attempts, he looked great. And Doug Peterson came out this week on Monday, and he said, we are giving Josh Adams the ball more, period. Because Corey Clement and Spandell Smallwood, they're not able to do anything. And this team, they need a run game in order to set up the play action like they want to. So, and the RPO, right? They want the run-pass option. They want to be able to either fake the zone inside, pull it and throw it, or hand that off and let it rip off, So Josh Adams, rest of the season, I think he'd be a good pickup, honestly. If you've got an extra bench spot going to the playoffs, he could be a sneaky player, guys. Number 31, we have Payton Barber. He does play against the defense of the Giants, and I think he could be used a little bit more, but to be honest, I don't know if I can trust him to an extent to where I want to 100% start him. That's not ever going to be the case, to be honest, with Payton Barber. Do I prefer Jacquizz Rodgers? I don't, because at least I get guaranteed touches. The last couple of weeks, 11 carries, 13 carries. At least he's getting some carries out of the backfield. This past week had 61 rushing yards. It's not bad, but as of right now, the matchup this week is pretty advantageous, and I think they could lean on him a little bit more in order to make sure that Ryan Fitzpatrick doesn't turn over the ball so often. Moving on to number 32, we have TJ Yeldon. I still think Yeldon can be a part of this offense. You know how Leonard Fournette caught that touchdown? To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if Leonard Fournette ends up stealing one of those this coming week. Because to be honest, he is the receiving back of this team. We've seen him all season long be using the passing game efficiently and be that third down back for this team. So this coming week against the Pittsburgh Steelers, against a defense that is pretty stout against the run, I could see them use TJ Yeldon a little bit more this week. He's a little bit more healthier than he was early this season when he was getting beat up. He's had that bye week. He had a couple, he didn't really play that often this past week. So this coming week, I think they could utilize him more and he could be decent. Number 33, Derrick Henry, as I mentioned before. Here's the scenario. If Derrick Henry and the Tennessee Titans, they get ahead early, they're not going to let Andrew Luck get the ball score. They're going to want to kill clock. And how did they do that? They do that with Dion Lewis, Marcus Mariota, and Derrick Henry running the ball behind this offensive line and being able to chew clock. I've seen drives in which the Tennessee Titans will kill 8 solid minutes and kick a field goal at the end of it, right? They're capable of doing that. They're capable of killing clock like no other team that I've seen in the NFL. They manage to continue to get first downs by just plugging up the middle and figuring it out. Derrick Henry is going to have some value. He's been scoring as of late as a flex option. If you have a lot of guys on bye week this week, we know the 6 teams are on bye this week. He's not a bad option. Latavius Murray, number 34. A little worried about him, but to be honest, he's going to get his attempts. He's going to have his opportunities. We saw Dalvin Cook and him split carries. That was it 2 weeks ago. Last week they had a bye week. That's right. So they could have a similar kind of experience this week, but I think Cook will get a little bit more. But I still think Latavius Murray, especially if Cook is to get injured, could be a decent option. Number 35, we have Chris Thompson, who really hasn't even practiced since week 8. As of right now, where do I see him? I think hopefully he's coming back this week. If in fact he does, he's a flex wide receiver 3 option in a PPR. I mean, running back option in a PPR, period. That is it. Because I don't trust his health. So if he doesn't play, I'm not surprised. But we'll just have to wait and see. Otherwise, I leave him on this list. The last guy I wanted to mention, Austin Ekeler. I still have hope for you, Austin Ekeler. I still have hope that you can figure it out and end up being fantasy relevant. You've been kind of faded within this offense. It's pretty much now Melvin Gordon, Tyrell Williams, and Keenan Allen exclusively, and you've kind of disappeared as of late. It's unfortunate, but hopefully you'll be able to figure something out. Pretty much anybody else that I would consider at like 36 is maybe Ty Montgomery. That's a pretty similar option to him. But that's pretty much it. If you guys have any other questions on guys that you may be considering that I have not mentioned in this video, please go down in the comment section, let me know. Otherwise, that is it. Everybody, thank you very much for watching. If you haven't already, click that subscribe button and click that like button down below. Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you have any questions, hit me up. Until next time, which is tomorrow, we'll be going over the wide receivers for Week 11. Thank you, guys. Have a nice day, and I'll see you guys.